Hi everyone. Amy, I would like you to pay attention over the next half an hour to 45 minutes and listen to Mr. Bala Pasurmarthi in his capacity as Chief Technology Officer at Transform Hub, talk about how companies can stay ahead, of the curve with digital transformation. And I Amy shared the LinkedIn profile for Bala, and we talk about transformation, and I like what I see. So from an engineer to having an MBA to looking at cybersecurity, and then now transformation. So I think he embodies what we all hope to achieve, in transformation. So without further ado, please, Bala, I hand the time over to you. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks, Marcus. Thanks, Amy. Hi, all. So good to see back to work or back to school after the long holidays. So hope everyone had good break, and then we start afresh and looking forward for a very transformative year. Yeah, 2020 has been a transformative year in a different way, though. But hopefully things will things are getting better soon, and we are moving in the right direction on what I see from the market. So getting started, just a brief about Transform Hub. You're able to see my screen, right? Yeah. So we are more onto the digital solutions provider onto digital, solution engineering, as well as digital transformation solutions across the fintech companies, as well as the emerging companies, I would say. So there are quite a few things that happen, the buzzwords happening in the world, the fintech, insurtech, regtech, and the way that the businesses are transforming themselves to get onto the online, create the platforms on their own. So we enable the solutions for them. So some of our biggest clients are like Singlife, the Ara Group, the Mintrust, and the Zurich Insurance, who are trying to uh, enhance the model, the way they do the business to reach out to the customers or the new markets. Okay, just a brief about me, my profile. I have been like 17 years of experience. Did my master's in computers 20 years back. Maybe I look young or look old, but yeah, it's been 20 years. So since then, I have been working on various product development within the financial industries, as well as in the banks, as well as in the insurance domain as well. So over the past 3 to 4 years, I've been more into the fintech, the transformation, the insurtech side of the business. Okay. So today's agenda will just briefly touch case upon the domains of digital transformation, and probably most of it you might have seen in the theory, but I will try to get my experiences, what I have seen in the market, so that you'll get a better idea on what's really happening on the market. And on the digital transformation, what would be the approach? I mean, this is the approach that I personally take when I really see a problem statement, or when a customer comes in and says, I need to do the transformation. Okay. And a brief touch case upon the stories of disruption, in which we'll talk about one of the Singapore's own Singlife story, and what will be the future trends and how we all can stay ahead of the curve. Okay. So mostly, if you know the major domains of digital transformation, or majorly it starts with the customers. So most of the time, right, the companies, or in case of the past 20 years, what happened is um, I have seen the digitization right from the dot-com bubble until now. So there are numerous technologies that came and that faded away, and people tried to do a lot of things. So back in early 2000s, there was no customer focus. People were trying to digitize their internal processes, or whatever the data that they are capturing, right? They were trying to manage the processes. So they never thought of the customer. They were only thinking on managing their processes, and managing the supply chain part of the story. Okay, so lately, over the past 5 to 6 years, we have seen a major transformation wherein people are understanding the technology, getting used to the technology. So this is where the transformation starts with, wherein you need to understand the customer needs. What does a customer need? So there is no value in doing something in which the end customer or there is no value proposition to the customer itself. So the major important thing is you need to understand the customer needs, and you need to gain the participation of the customers. No matter you do the digitization and the transformation, you release a mobile app, if the customer doesn't use it, there is no point there. So you always need to have that customer centric focus over there. The second major thing that's happening is the competition, wherein with the globalization and with all the new innovative ideas, right? Any transformation is not localized anymore. The businesses are happening at a global level. So it doesn't matter, a person sitting in either China or India or even Europe can run a business out of Singapore online. So that's how the world is changing, and it's very competitive. And at one side, the competition is one part of the story wherein you are competing, but the other thing is that as part of the digital transformation that every company is trying to do is the collaboration and the partnerships. So instead of taking the competitor as a competitor, you might have something different than what they are doing, then just collaborate and build something bigger. Like if you see the recent case of Grab Singtel, both are good in technologies, both have combined together to come up with a new neo banking or a kind of digital banking space. So you might have heard recently, 4 months, they got a license to create a new digital bank in Singapore. So that's called transformation. So Singtel is not only doing the telecom, and Grab is not only running the delivery or the services, the transportation services. They both are combining to create something new, which is the digital bank, and competing with the traditional banking services. So this is transformation. The most important thing of the transformation is data. There is unprecedented increase of data that's happening. Everything that you do, every moment is captured, and it is stored within your edge devices that you call the mobile devices or the customer devices or the cloud data or the products database itself. So one of the major challenges is how do we derive the value from this data? So we'll look into the data aspect of it in a couple of slides from now, wherein when we see the approach, right, I'll briefly tell you what is the importance of data in digital transformation. And the last but not the least is the innovation and the value. The technology is changing rapidly. New technology is coming every day. I personally myself have seen a complete change of the technology. I mean, the technology that I started my career with, I'm no longer working on the same technology. So it's completely changing, and mostly the innovation and the value, it's simplification of the tech enablement, meaning the coming up of the cloud technologies like AWS or Azure. It's actually simplifying the way that the businesses get into digital transformation or digitize themselves. So mostly the approach, usually what I personally believe is, or when we start on digital transformation, right, the first thing you need to understand is what's the business process. So once you understand the business process, then the most important step is what is the data that we have, or you need to understand the data that the organization has. So I think most of you guys are working individuals. You can go back and see within your own organizations what is the business process and where are the gaps in there. And then the next step would be understand the data layer, in which where is the data scattered over. So most of the time, right, like what I have seen in the market, which is a wrong approach in my opinion, that when we say about digital transformation, people just buy an off-shelf product and they just implement it, which is adding one more product to their application layer, one more set of data points. But I personally don't believe that will work in the long run. The reason being, if you don't understand your data, bringing in a new product will not add any value. The product decision of that product should come at a later stage once we understand the data. So once you know that where is the data stored and where is the source of truth of that data. So you have 10 different applications. You need to understand which application is the source of truth of which kind of data. Once you identify that data, then you think about the applications or the products internally that you are using. Now, once these three assessment of these three are done, right, then you have to see where the business process can be improved, how the the data can be cleansed, or how the data can be enhanced, and then understand what kind of applications need to be enhanced. Then comes the final part wherein the technology selection and the implementation. So always the technology should come at last. Most of the people start with technology, which is the wrong start, wherein they invest in a lot, and after 3 to 4 years of burning all the money, the organizations don't move anywhere. So that's what has been happening over the past 4 to 5 years. Like with the advent of big data and everything, people have invested a lot. But my suggestion or my opinion is that we have to understand these different layers and then come up with a solution which increases the business or the data layer or the application layer. And then in the technology, if you see any holes there that some technology needs to come in, then go with the products which can fill that gap, that specific gap. So this would be my opinion of the digital transformation, or my kind of an approach towards the digital transformation. So when you see the stories of disruption, right? Like I know you might have read the case studies about the Kodak, the Fujifilm, or the Blockbuster, which wanted to run their business in a traditional way, but due to the competition and the digital uh, or the transformations occurring across the globe, they were faded away. They are faded away. I mean, I recently heard a couple of Blockbuster stores somewhere in the Asian region, but I was surprised to hear that still people are used to that old model. But the way that the businesses have gone, I mean, one of the prime businesses at one point of time have gone, shows the power of disruption or the power of customer, meaning the customers quickly can adopt to the new technology and they have the power to take the business down. So it's always very important for the businesses to learn from the previous experiences and then enhance themselves. So coming back to the Amazon story, right? So Amazon started their journey by selling the books or the music online. And then they started putting in the analytics layer on top of it. And all of this, they did it way back in 2003, 2004. Then they realized that the businesses that they are doing or the value that they are deriving from it, they can move into a different set of businesses. So you have the customer base and you can use the same customer base to get into the new set of businesses in which you have the connected customers across the platforms looking at different things. One example is you have an Amazon account, you can always go into the Amazon Prime. You can always buy with the same account. You can always view the videos with the same account. And one of the biggest transformation in tech space that Amazon did is, from an online book or music seller, they moved into pure technology. Like they came up with AWS, the Amazon Web Services, which we closely work with, and they have everything in there. You talk about the analytics, the artificial intelligence, or the blockchain. They have every service in AWS. So how did they do that? It's more like, I mean, from the case studies that I have read. So at one point, Amazon was increasing on the servers to manage the customer capacity. So as they were increasing the capacity, at one stage they realized that their servers have become very huge and they cannot cut down on the cost. So what they did, they shared their computing capacity. That's what AWS started with. So they are running their own business. They shared their computing capacity to the outside world and they called it cloud. And now everyone is believing in it and everyone is following it. So in a way, I would say that's a transformation on the business layer wherein they are venturing into a different business, trying to capture a different market, still disrupting the technology and the way the technology is being used. And that new model is also creating a customer value. So I would take Amazon as a pure disruptor in the technology industry, which has changed the entire tech space over the past 10 years. So the another example of the disruption is Singlife. It's Singapore company now. They are merging with Aviva, and we closely work with them. So they started. I mean, Singlife started as an insurtech company 5 years back, in which they started off with a minimum basic insurance, a digital insurance seller in the market, in Singapore market. But slowly they realized that there is a space that people uh, are looking at more than insurance. Like when you go to any other insurer, right, you will see the insurance as well as the investment part of the story. But what Singlife did is they understood the, the customer, and they came up with a product called Singlife account, in which a customer can put in their money and they will get their own debit card which has an insurance back and also an investment. So, and also not all the systems to run this tech is built by Singlife. So what they did is they integrated with various platforms. This is more on the collaboration side. So to integrate on the banking side of the story, they went with a product, a neo banking product called Rails Bank, integrated with it, and that is integrated back to TBS. To get the customer, not the KYC of the customer or the AML, they integrated with the KYC platforms which are SaaS based, meaning the cloud platforms. So this is how the complete Singlife business model itself is running out of cloud, and it is integrated to different platforms, and everything is running out of cloud. So they're reducing their cost of infrastructure as well, and increasing the customer engagement through the mobile app and the advisor journeys. So Singlife is one of the major disruptor that happened in the insurtech in Singapore. So looking forward at the trends that we have, or that I see happening in the market going forward, is more on the advent of the 5G technology and the Internet of Things, the IoT space. I think Singapore has been the initial user. I think most of you guys have seen the usage of the bicycles, the rented bicycles, right? So that's a pure use case of Internet of Things. I think it faded away, but it has been growing in the other parts of the world, the other emerging nations. Um, like people can rent the e-scooters, or I think now even the cars are also on rent. So that's one of the use case wherein the Internet of Things work, and people are researching a lot on how to use the 5G technology with Internet of Things. The other part will be on the data analytics. It's very important to understand the competition, understand the dynamics of the market, and transform the business, or you can change the business model based on it. You can change your um, the technology or the application model based on the analytics of the customer behavior. And on top of it, if you add up the AI or the machine learning on analytics space, right? So that is going to increase I mean, it's more like the predictive analytics that you do, or you get into the neural networks. So it helps the key decision makers or even the customers to make decisions quickly based on it. It's more of data-based analytics rather than opinionated analytics, or it's not in any opinion. So based on the data on what's happening, what's the trend, you can get into the AI and I mean the AI and the machine learning will help to make better decisions. Coming to the blockchain part of the story, I know the Bitcoins and everything, Bitcoin started the blockchain concept, but now the blockchain is moving beyond the cryptocurrency. So cryptocurrency is just the start. Now people are getting into the identity management, getting into the smart contracts, and everything is digitized in the blockchain, wherein it cannot be changed. So just as an example, I mean, um, we are working with one of the customer on the identity management in blockchain space, wherein it's been under the test bed with the Singapore itself, wherein going forward, every individual will get a digital identity for yourself based out of blockchain. And you go to any clinic or uh, any polyclinics, right, for your COVID test. So they are going to pilot it for travels. So you go for polyclinic, based on your identity, they will perform a COVID test for you, and that certificate is attached to your identity. So you need not give the certificates or your medical certificates to everyone, or you need not carry any document or pictures. What you get as part of your identity is just a QR code, which you store it on your phone. So once you reach or you want to move out of Singapore, you reach to the immigration, you'll just show your digital identity, your QR code, and the ICA will just scan it and they will see your entire record. When you did your COVID test and whether you are fit to travel or not. So this is a transformation. You need not carry any papers and then show the papers to the immigration authorities that yes, I got the COVID test done, and everything is stored. And they are making this global. In a way, this identity stays with you, and this identity, I mean, if you take this use case as an example, they will identify all the participating clinics or the doctors across the globe. So you can get it from anyone, and that is stored and you can show it anywhere. So that's one of the use case that as an example people are doing in the blockchain space. And mostly or in the market, right, the robotic process automation, mostly the process automation has gained speed during the COVID times, because a lot of people were working from home, and then they realized that um, this pandemic or this kind of a pandemic that happens even in future, we have to be resilient. So some of the processes that are robotic in nature, they are automating it. And even on the industrialized I mean the heavy industries, right, they are looking forward into the IoT part, wherein people can sit from anywhere and then operate the machinery from anywhere. And most important aspect with this digital transformation or digitization, people are putting in the data into the cloud and everywhere. The data is getting distributed rapidly. So how do you secure the data? So cybersecurity and the cyber threat management is something that is coming up in future, and people are really looking into it. And most of the things, I would say, like the cybersecurity gains importance because of the advancement of quantum computing. So once the quantum computing comes, so the current processing power will increase by 4 times. Meaning, if you feel that your computer is super fast, with the advent of quantum computing, it will be 4 times faster than what you see now. And with that rapid computing power, right, the current crypto or the current way of encrypting the stuff, you can easily crack it. So the cryptography will also need to be enhanced with the advancement of quantum computing. So that is something that uh, even Microsoft is looking into it, and then they are trying to enhance the systems. So probably that is something which we might see in the next 3 to 4 years. So how to stay ahead of all of this? I know there are a lot of things happening in the world, new technologies, new businesses, new way of doing things, and it's confusing. It's really confusing for everyone. So how do we all stay ahead of this? So the most important thing is be agile. World is changing very fast. We also have to change with the world. Never be static at one place. Keep changing. Always keep a view on market dynamics. Always look around, see the news, see the tech news, see the what's happening, which company is doing what, how they are doing it. Keep a watch on it. And always, even when you go into in your own organization and try to do something right, the first most important thing is understand the problem statement. Whatever the digital transformation that you see, right, if you go into the root of why this happened, it's a very small thing. Actually, it's a very small problem that people have realized and said, okay, let's solve this problem once and for all. And that led to a huge digital transformations. And always it's continuous learning. Always keep learning. Never stop learning, because once you stop learning, that's it. You won't see what you won't even understand what's happening when you look back 3 years down the road. So you need to always keep upgrading yourself, because I mean, I personally have seen, even in the tech space, right, people who have been stuck in late 2000s, when they were working on some technologies and they were comfortable working in those technologies and they were happy working there and they never learned. But now when they want to come out and see the world, right, they don't understand the current technology. They are stuck there. And to improve their knowledge level for the 10 years, right, it's not easy. It's very difficult. So you have to, I mean, I personally had that struggle as well. So it's not that difficult. So it's very important to always continuously learn. And most important thing, the focus, the internal focus should always be on the process, people, and technology. Because if you, one part of it is the problem statement coming in from the outside world, second part of it is on the success of the digital transformation happens from the people, the process you define, and the technology you define internal to the organization. And always, to me, right, digital transformation is not an end state. You will never see, okay, we have finished our digital transformation. No, it will never happen. There is no end state to it. It's always a journey and always requires a continuous improvement. Yep. So that's all I have to say. So any questions or anything, please shoot out.
Thank you, Bala. So students, if you have any questions, oh, there's one here. So good. Makes my job easy. Okay, so Bala can read the chat window. With technology changing so fast, how does a company invest in a particular technology without it being irrelevant or outdated and having to incur massive costs?
Okay, with technology changing fast, how does a company invest in a particular technology? Yeah, I think mostly, right. That's one of the reason you see that most of the companies, right, in the technology space are moving towards the open source. wherein there is no huge investment there. You can do a small POCs in there, the proof of concepts, and open source anyway is free. And that's the way the market is moving. So people know that this is a problem, and they are not investing in huge products anymore now. So they are trying to go with smaller products, with smaller POCs, and with open source technologies. So that's one way you can keep ahead and keep moving. And if you see on the technology space, right, no matter what technology you talk about, I mean, if you take the front end technology, say Angular or React or the .NET, the concept remains the same. It's only the way you implement it, how you reach it out. So that's the reason I would say go with more open source to reduce the costs. I hope that answers the question. Okay.
Next question is, hi Bala, I would like to gain more insights about the challenge and opportunities that SMEs will be facing in digital transformation. So I guess a focus on SMEs and whether that's different from larger organizations with more resources. Yeah.
I would say SMEs are in a best position now. So, I mean, as I said, right, on the technology space, they have open source, and they have lesser money they can go on cloud with lower cost, pay as you use models, and they can digitize or move into the digital transformation themselves. Compared to the bigger organizations, right? The bigger organizations have huge systems in place. So for them, digital transformation itself is a very huge task. I don't see it as a 3-month or a 4-month kind of a project. So that's where I said, right, in the earlier legacy models, all the systems are distributed, all the data is distributed. So that's where the bigger companies have more challenge compared to the SMEs.
Okay, thank you. Next question, a question from Terence. From an incident in Singapore, which a nurse was given 6 doses despite the system showing 2 maximum doses. How accurate would the blockchain be if it's implemented, regardless of human error or system error?
I would say that, I mean, the blockchain is, I would say, is a kind of a distributed ledger or a database. So it's what you put in. Say, end of the day, any system that you take, right, you will always have that human error. In one way, if you want to avoid that human error using the artificial intelligence or machine learning, end of the day, even those logics are also developed by humans. So it's very tough to say whether to believe or in a system or a human, but it's always a thin line to me. So from the blockchain point of view, right? So that's where the blockchain comes into picture. If you see the concept of it, there are different nodes, and you put in the data, and someone else looks into it and says, okay, this data is correct, and that's where it goes into the blockchain. But again, if someone else is vetting it and saying that this data is correct, then that's how it goes in. So to me, it's a very thin line. I mean, you really cannot distrust the humans, or you cannot blindly trust the machines. Otherwise, we probably will be creating some cyborgs in the future, which we saw in 20 years back. Probably that might be a reality. I think you can look into one of a conversation between the 2 chatbots, the ML chatbots, I think, which happened 3 to 4 years back. I really can't remember. The 2 chatbots, the machine learning based chatbots, right? They were talking to each other. It started with hi and hello, and suddenly it went into the conversation, automatically went into something in which we humans couldn't understand. They were talking in some cryptic language. So that's how machines behave in machine learning. So we humans who created it could not understand why they are behaving. I think they stopped that project for now.
Okay. Yeah, so you also mentioned earlier about RPA, right? Robotic process
Process automation.
automation,
Yep.
right? So I have a story about Singtel. So Singtel's org structure has robots in them.
Mm-hmm.
So specifically, so when because they rolled out RPA a couple of years ago, and in the org structure, they're actually robots that report to specific managers. So you can email a robot, you can email a manager. So you have different people in charge of different robots, and they're all, they report to different managers. So I think this is the first step towards, having cyborgs as co-workers. uh, uh, okay, on to the next question. Uh,
I
I think
think,
I saw one from Agnes about cybersecurity.
yeah, right. I was just looking into it. So yeah, cybersecurity is definitely pretty important in these days. I think even when you look into the MAS TRM guidelines, right, the technology risk management, they have increased the awareness on the cybersecurity, and they have mandated that every that product that goes into the market needs to be vetted against the penetration testing uh, or the threats that are happening. So if you are looking for that want to digitalize and little knowledge, there are some cyber security companies who are SaaS based models, like software as a service, wherein you can integrate with them and they will provide you the threat verification or the threat modeling or alerting you on the threats and everything on the cloud itself. So if you go into the cloud space, right, AWS is having few services called the inspector and everything. I think be it on AWS or Azure, they have these services wherein you can just enable them and use pay-per-use, which will start looking into the cybersecurity aspect of the infrastructure. But one way I would say, when you want to, I mean, do not take the cybersecurity or the security aspect at the end state. That's one of my advice. So any software that is being developed, right, you put in the security as a design principle right from day one. You do the code checks and everything even before it goes into the UATs or the productions. So that's one way of managing that, the security aspect of the softwares.
Okay, next question is about, I guess, whether there's a trend to invest in a big system built from scratch or to invest in many smaller cloud-based solutions to address the organization's needs.
Um, I would say some of them, I mean, there are different approaches depending on the way the business runs. So one of the approach that we suggest is that, I mean, yes, each system has a specific set of purpose to it, and not one system can build up that purpose. Like a CRM has its own specific set of functions, an accounting software has its own set of functions. So you cannot try to build everything. That will be very huge. I mean, that's how the SAPs and everything came into picture, and that becomes very expensive. So you can go with the smaller solutions or the SaaS providers, but make sure that you have an integration layer lying with you, because no matter what you say, there are too many startups, too many things happening, and there is one question on the data as well. So let's assume that you go with a SaaS provider who started off his product like 6 years back. I mean, it can happen that they bust their business and they close down. What happens to your data? So it's always important that when you define the architecture of your system, right, or the product within the organization, make sure that the core data lies with you, the integrator or system integration lies with you, and that integrates with all the systems. So at any case point of time you want to plug out one system or plug in a different system, it should be easy for you.
Good answer.
Yep.
Next one, you mentioned that we should focus on customers' needs in our digital transformation strategy. If our customers are not tech savvy, how should the company transform them?
I would say the customers are very quick in adopting to the technology. I mean, uh, I think couple of generations have already adopted to it, but yes, there is a long way to go. I mean, if you compare with Singapore, I think most of the customers are bit tech savvy, but if you really go into the Southeast Asian region or even India and some of the African countries, there's still a long way to go. So I think that is why if you see the new kinds of apps, right? Um, People are not looking into the text based or the menu based. Most of the people are trying to reach out to the customer image based. So if you, I mean, for example, you go into a Pizza Hut uh, the app, right? You can just see the images of what you want to order and just one button called order now. That's all. So keep it simple. The UI, right? Don't keep so many buttons or so many functions. Keep the user interface very simple. So you keep as simple as you keep, the more customers are engaged to the platform.
So next question, let me paraphrase because I had a similar question um, about like essentially what's the greatest hurdle of to convince company leaders to invest in digital transformation? Because they have existing systems that cost them a lot of money to build, and they've been relying on them, and they don't want to let it go and spend more money to
Yeah, right. I
yeah.
think this has been happening even if you take the cases of even DBS, OCBC, right? The way they created the mobile apps and came into the market. So they don't discard any old legacy systems. I mean, that might lead to failure because I mean, I myself came from the banking system and I mean the banking domain. We once tried to move out the core banking system from one platform to another one, which we couldn't do it after 8 months also because the features or the functionality. I mean, the bank was using a legacy core banking system which was 30 years old, and that has been enhanced 30. It runs out of AS 400. Even you see the big insurance companies, right? They run their core systems on AS 400. So it's very difficult to change. But the only thing that you can do is that you can build a layer in front of it which can interact with the core system, and then you start building and reaching out the customer from the front layer.
So almost like screen scraping.
Yeah, screen scrape. I mean, that's what the robotic process automation tools do most of the times. So what I mean, in some of the, I mean, in one of the use cases that I saw is that it logs in with the AS into the AS400 system as a user, screen scrapes, pull the data and push it into the new systems. So that's constantly happening. So that is
So
one way of achieving, but at some point, right, once the most of the data or the features or the functionality is slowly moved out, it will be phased out.
we hope, yeah. Okay, so there are a few questions here about cybersecurity, about privacy, about how would a company know if they've chosen the correct technology to place their bets on, right? Or are they, after implementation, gonna just realize that they need to play catch up again and something new is on the horizon again?
Yeah, on the data security is it? That's the question,
No,
right?
in general, technology in general. How do you choose the correct technology?
Yeah.
There were a couple of questions on data security. People want to know how do you advise companies on
Yep.
on cybersecurity issues and privacy issues as well.
Yeah. So mostly, right? I mean, I would advise like most of the people who come from the financial domain, they know about the MASTRM guidelines, the Mass Technology Risk Management guidelines. So they do have a guidelines and a checklist specified for the financial institutions on how they choose the vendor. And it's just the guidelines given by MAS and it is applicable for any industry. So I advise you go through that, and there are some guidelines and checklists given by them to look into the vendors or the software vendor providers and what all the right questions to ask them. So it's all given there. So it's a mandate for the financial companies to do it, like the banks and the insurance companies to do it in Singapore, but it can be applied for any industry. As long as the customer's data is being stored somewhere in the cloud, they give those guidelines. So go through those guidelines and they specify how to choose a vendor or how to choose a product, what to do with the product. So these are the right questions to ask. And again, based on the company policy, right? If the business sees that, okay, this is not a risk item for me, then you can just discard it. Again, choosing from whatever the guidelines that we have. So I advise everyone look into the MAS TRM guidelines. That would give you a good picture on how to look the softwares or the products that we are buying.
And privacy issues and I guess cybersecurity issues. I think the class wants to know your view on that, especially privacy, I guess.
Yeah, privacy is, see, I mean, it's something like most of the products, right? Or the products that you use, most of the time people do say that where they store the data, it's a mandate actually. Like you install your WhatsApp or Facebook or Insta, right? Once you create an account, they'll give you all the details where your data is, how it's being used and everything. I mean, that's a mandate. But most of us don't even look into the terms and conditions because they are huge. So, one part of it is any product, leaving the social media aside, because that's completely uncontrollable. If you really look into the products wherein your customer data is going in and there is a cloud, so it's very important that how the data is given to the front end system. So how the application is architected is very important. Where the data is, the most important to know is where the data is, and is the data capture secure or not. Like showing the data onto the front ends, is it secure or not? So from that layer itself, like usually if you talk about in the security aspects, right? Like whenever you call a backend system, you call an API, application program interface. That's how the applications are built now. So when you're calling an API, what is the level of security? So each user, when they log in, right, they get a token which expires in 5 minutes or 10 minutes or half an hour, something like that. And they use that token to send it to the API, and the token will be validated. So this is how the security works. If the token generation is not valid, or they're just taking a token and then not checking on that token, then that's where the security fails. So these are all the things, small things that we need to look into it. And that's where the example that I gave, right? The identity management on a blockchain. So what happens is that the identity of a person stays with you, with us, the users. So the user decides what data I want to give. It's not the other way. As of now, it's happening the other way. If you log into a platform using Facebook, right, or an application, the application will say, okay, we will take your email, name, and address or your photo from Facebook. Do you accept to it? It's something like, you want to use my application, this is the data I need. So now things are changing with the advent of the identity management coming into picture, right? The identity stays with you. You tell the application that this is the data I want to give. Whether you will work or not, it's up to you. So that is forcing the applications or the app guys to change the way they are storing the data. If the customer says, I want to give my name to your platform to show on your platform, then their application have to adopt to this kind of a model. So that's how the world is changing. That's one of the reason, because of the privacy issues only, the world is looking into that direction, that the identity stays with the customer rather than with the company providing the app.
Okay, so thank you everyone for all your wonderful questions. So I'm going to choose one question and get Bala to answer this last question, because
Yep.
otherwise we're going to be here till 9 p.m.
I think it's
Okay.
quite a few questions though.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
mean, probably Amy, you can. I think you all have my LinkedIn profile, right? So you can shoot out the questions in there.
Thank you. Okay.
So
So one
definitely
last
I'll
question.
answer.
Since I'm moderating, I get to choose which one. So people. So a question about people. A few people ask this question about people. So people are difficult, right? So are very resistant to change. People love the status quo. Yeah.
Right.
So the question to you is, what strategies or tactics do you have to change mindsets so that people, whether or not they are leaders or people in other parts of the org structure, are more willing and more accepting of impending disruption and impending change? Yeah.
Yeah, I think mostly right from the people point of view. I mean, as I said, right. I mean that you can see on the slide. Technology. I mean, people try to push the technology first, which is what I always say that don't push the technology. Because most of the digital transformation initiatives lie with the tech teams. And as soon as the tech teams come into picture, you all know, I mean, even me being a techie, they just say, okay, do this. It will solve your problem. So that's where it's very important to understand the problem statement. It has to be at the holistic level. So understand the business process, and when you deal with the users, right, or the people whom you want to deal with or to change their mindset, you have to explain them the problem that, I mean, they definitely know the problem that they are facing, but in reality they won't accept it, because there is always this fear that if tech comes, my job is lost. So that is something, I mean, we have to we I mean, I don't say how to say it, but it's very important that they understand that they also need to upgrade. So that's very important. I mean, if you have seen the mobile phones 20 years back and the smartphones that we have now, it's a complete change and everyone adopted to it. I mean, no one in the middle said, okay, I don't want a touchscreen phone. I'll still use the old phone or a 2G phone. At some point, it gets obsolete and it's gone. So that's where it is very important to tell them that it's very it's very important for them to upgrade as well, and how this transformation helps them in the business process as well as the growth, and how it solves their problem. First understand their problem first and try to solve their problem, then they will start thinking about the real bigger problems.
Very much. So let me, since you shared so many stories, let me share one story
Yep.
about motivating people to change. So when, like maybe 10 years ago, when DBS was trying to change and reinvent itself, they were trying to change. I'm not sure if you remember this, but if you ever lost your credit card 10 years ago, it would take maybe 5 to 10 working days before you receive the replacement card. Yeah, so it's a very slow manual process. So Paul Corbin was there. So he got a whole bunch of different people in, and he told them, we need to change. We need to change our process so that we can do this faster. And how he motivated people was not because you want to give better customer service, not because you want the customer to receive the card faster and they'll be happier. But he said that what's going to happen is we spend so long to get the replacement card to our customer. What you are doing is you are giving your customer the opportunity to learn how to use another bank's credit card. And by the time your replacement credit card comes back, they're not going to switch back to the DBS credit card because they are used to using some other credit card. So you're going to start losing customers. So the way he motivated them was not because it's the right thing to do because it's good for customers, but because of a real business need. Yeah. So I mean, so if it's going to hurt your rice bowl, I think people will pay attention lah. Yeah. So, I mean, long story short, they managed to cut it down to 2 days. And they started doing callbacks. Oh, well, they didn't do callbacks. They did like this, the post-transaction surveys. And the satisfaction scores were very low, and they couldn't figure out why, because they moved the process from almost 2 weeks to 2 days. So they started talking to people. So they call people and they say, hey, you received a replacement credit card recently, how was the experience? So then they'll say, oh, it was great, wonderful. I got it in 2 days. But then you know what the customer says? It says, well, what happened to my ATM card? So they forgot the larger picture that people are asking for replacement credit cards because they lost their whole wallet. So while they changed one process, they didn't change the other processes. So it again speaks to what is it exactly, what problem are you trying to solve for the customer, right? So our organizations nowadays are so siloed that we just worry about our little fiefdom and we don't care about the rest of the organization. So I think the moral of this story is that, we need to solve the correct problem. Otherwise, we're not going to move the needle. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
That's right.
Sorry, my cat is. Okay. So thank you very much, Bala. It's been very informative, and as you can see from the students, barrage of questions that never stops. Yeah. Everyone is very interested in what you have to say, and we are very thankful that you could spend some time with us this evening. And please don't be a stranger to SUSS. We will call you back for many different things.
Sure, definitely. Thank you all, and again, Happy New Year to everyone. So I hope you really enjoyed the session and then gained insights.